Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 153rd episode of the House of Light expansion. First run through YouTube, playing as the Archaeologist. Expansion for Book of Hours. I think by this point, hopefully that is apparent to everybody. I'm changing it up, so we will do the housekeeping on the Wednesday episode now. So the small practical matter. I'm probably going to break up the recording of the episodes this week. However, I don't know. I'm not 5, so I don't make like a massive deal about my birthday, but it is actually my birthday on Tuesday. So that would normally be the day that I record these things. And if I wind up doing something, I have sometimes done a stream on those days or just otherwise have changed it up. And I do have a bit of a fairly heavy week of work ahead of me, and no, I'm not taking the day off for that day. But it just means that there may be a small interruption in the normal time when I would record these sorts of things. Again, I don't think it should be a problem, but seeing as I don't get to record the videos, you know, it doesn't make any sense to record a video after you know that there's going to be a problem. So if there is an interruption to the flow of videos, it may just be that I'm trying to take the opportunity on the Thursday to record them, which of course would mean that probably there isn't an episode on the Thursday. But I think I should be able to get it all balanced out. Just wanted to try and flag it if it comes up. So we are working on wrong book. I do want to keep an eye on Opus Magnum Ceruleum. This is so that I can answer any of the challenges that come up. As I said a little bit earlier, so this foresight will work for me. So basically, because we're going to be using this to level up Disciplines of the Scar, we're going to be looking for Lantern and Edge, but we only need 4. So close to the time when we complete the book, we should be... Actually, you know what? I think we're going to get the foresight from that book now that I remember it. But yeah, so this will just be a little something to help us push the requirement over the edge. But right now we want to focus on the sky stories, which we'll be using with the preliminal meter. Should get those in about 30 seconds. This skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. I'll worry about sort of planting it in the right place once we've finished leveling up. It does a lot with Silence This Man, so I don't think the impulse is really going to help us, but again, we hire Denzel for the opportunity he gives us rather than the reality. And of course, the difference here, I've said this a couple of times, but we are in a good enough spot. I'm actually going to get some vegetables. Yeah, I can get some vegetables. I think what I'll do with the vegetables here is I'll maybe try and talk with the chickens to get some more eggs. I don't really need them right now, but you know what? I'm sure there's going to be a day I regret doing that, so let's not build bad habits. Yeah, I figure having those eggs, they're a nice little extra one to have. You know, they don't take a whole lot to get. And if I find myself short of them, then I need to draw down my vegetable stocks. And, you know, not the end of the world. There's other ways of getting things that you can feed chickens. But if I'm set up, I'll just do 2. If I'm set up for it now, then it saves me the trouble when it's a little harder to get this stuff. Okay, the Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear the stream of eyes. We have agreed to part almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree, He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of the journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Fredrik Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, Lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crowned growth. The Lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed. But it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. From History to Eternity, a contraband manual of the Inks of Revelation, the author explains in a brief foreword that she is a high-ranking officer of an agency of the duties, and that though she supports its mission, she has concerns about the long-term consequences of its work. All histories are braided into a golden loop, a shining ascent to eternity. I had never imagined I could be afraid that there might be too few truths. I could be wrong, but I'd like to leave at least one door ajar. Ichor Auroral can be brewed into an Incastum Terminale associated with the second history, using Inks of Revelation techniques with rose aspect. The author warns that this is exceptionally difficult, since these techniques aren't aligned with rose, but that's why I'm hoping the door will stay ajar, even once all the others are closed. I wish you luck. And The Locksmith's Dream Incursus, the fifth and final volume of Teresa Galmier's notorious work, which began as an examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans, but became an account of her own occult journey. This volume was apparently never published, nor allegedly even written, yet here it is. The law goes all the way back to stone. The keys cannot be held or owned. This had, I believe, the unexpected consequence that those outside the law may hold and own them, but even they cannot keep them, and of course a key is no more physical than a spirit, but a spirit may be housed in a body, and I have touched a key with my own hands. So the Legions hold the keys. I had thought the Legions only, old and powerful transgressors of the crime of the sky, but I begin to understand that the crime of the sky is more even than it seems, and why a twin who unites what is not to be divided might accept a Legion as her name. Okay, so let's start with the Sky Stories uplift. And I think at this point I would prefer the Faust because the Fet has a little bit more use with the other sources. So for instance, I could use the Fet with the Gull Colony if I wanted. Although, that does cut me off from... Oh, Epiphany probably helps me out. At least I hope it does, because surely Epiphany gives me Revelation. Here's what I'll do. Let's queue up with Natan's desk. We will get a contradiction. Seems to me I'll only have use for one more tryst, so for that I will get Musgrave's sketches. I think I'll leave it at that. Better now. And I have my prize, the Karashim Portolan, a beautifully illustrated and heavily annotated Portolan, a nautical atlas of ports and destinations. So definitely we've got our work cut out for us for the rest of the season. Alright, I don't mind giving up the whist here. There's not much else for me to do. Well, I guess if I do that, no, we can still use the metal. And we have a revelation. I wasn't expecting that. Actually, yeah, I shouldn't have done that because I sort of want to see if the epiphany... So it's risky for me to do this, but I actually want to see if the epiphany will take me through. Unexpected folds and, finds in the folds of earth and skies. Okay, so this definitely is going to go to Crowcross Sands. So if I were to go to the Gull Colony... Yeah, I can use the core here. Okay, I can see this working. Another foresight. This is purely for my curiosity at this point, but I very rarely write this down. Alright. There was a man of letters to... it was for the men of letters to record these epiphanies with extreme care, seeing that they themselves are the most delicate and evanescent of moments. Shameful. The mysteries in this have defeated me for now. You can always try again later. Alright. That's a shame. Obviously we had the opportunity, and I wanted to learn more about epiphanies. I'm actually going to take a minute to write that down, though. So, moon moth forge? Okay. Observations on the Peacock Door. Nangala of Lagash discusses the Peacock Door, the highest door available to mortals in the Mansis, a rent, an imperfection, an abrasion. Notably, the book is written in Vac, which, by some accounts, is another aspect of the Peacock Door itself. Nangala addresses this by apologizing courteously to the door and the language at the end of every section. The Peacock Door did not exist, Nangala says, in the days when the gods from stone entered the Mansis. They used the fanged key to open the Savage Door, a door not usually available to mortals. Speech, as the initiates of Kion would have it, is a wound. I fear that through that wound the blood of the Mansis flows even now, and that one day speech will be an end to dream. I fear that, but I fear the alternative far more. And Musgrave sketches. Musgrave, 4th Baron Brankrug, was widely mocked as the Bleeding Baron and the Lambda Wolf, but these sketches reveal a complex, somber inner life. Art begins in colors, grows dappled, finally is either mostly darkness or mostly light. Musgrave discusses the temptation of the perfectly minimal palest painting. He has so far managed to resist this temptation, but does guiltily describe success in using sights and sensations with winter aspect to create first a chili elixir from flowers, which he believes he can refine further into a final pigment. Okay, so we don't have much else to do at this point. I'll just throw things into money making. Nope. And I am now fascinated. Faust is the brightest part of the soul. Sometimes it can grow too bright for safety. A defeat when additional lantern is present makes Faust vulnerable to fascination. So this changes it up a little bit. We'll still be able to get the book read, but my inner light gutters then flares. I'm snared in a dangerous fascination. The higher I rise, the more I see. So for that, we're going to want the nectar. Now this is fairly easy because I have the bed that I do. In fact, all I really need is a glass of water for that. So the question for me now is, do I want to... Yeah, this is an interesting question. So do I want to... do I want to carry something overnight? So I could technically carry the foresight. Don't really think it's worth it. So instead I'll get a head start on the recovery. That's only one nectar. Now it does matter which of these goes in the... I'm trying to avoid drums and dances just because that has other uses. Unfortunately, I don't think I have 4 nectar with the others, at least what I'm doing. Okay, well, we just won't have drums and dances for tomorrow then. Part of tomorrow. All right, well. Offer this beast my company. Who knows? Perhaps it will offer something in return. I didn't realize I was that close to getting the vegetables, obviously. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. Again, there's not that much for me to worry about in terms of today's things to do today. It's just a little funny that it turned out that way. Okay, again, I'm not really reading that. Okay, this will be good to play around with. And now it suggests a meal would be welcome. So tomorrow I'm going to treat this a little bit differently. We've got... Actually, can I fit you back? Apparently not. Memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. So, there's a couple things I'm going to get out of the way. So, first of all, let's open up the package. We want to try... I don't see any reason to delay using the... trying to read the same book again. Although... Yeah, these both get me the same. Or do they? Yeah, they do. So again, it'd be nice if I had a memory to throw at it, but well, technically I do, but not one that I'm willing to give up here. So, although I guess we could wait to see if it's a sunny day. If it's a sunny day, that solves the problem. It's raining. So again, we may run into the same problem. If we do, so be it. But I'm going to try and read this. So I think Disciplines of the Scar is one of those ones I'd actually like to take as far as I can. At the very least, it'd be an 8 or a 9. And seeing as it's currently a 4, I can see myself throwing quite a bit at that. Kanishk at the Spider's Door doesn't quite do the same. Although how the end will begin seems to be pretty spicy. So let's take that at Ava's desk. So that'll be one we read in VAC. So that one we gotta use Edict Martial, unless I can find a higher edge, but I think that's as far as it goes. Now this gets a little more interesting. So I suppose I could toss an old wound at it if I was so inclined, but we're still 3 short. And I think we have a Kukurbit Barrette. Okay. Yeah, this is definitely a bit of a riskier run that I'm doing here, but I kind of like it for that too. So yeah, I think in this case here, I'm actually going to see what I can generate just by... No, actually that doesn't make any sense. So I'll still bring in Denzel. I am, however, going to feed the chicken. Satisfy this creature's appetite. Food will make a hungry beast or a wild one cooperative. Now, I'm also going to treat this a little bit differently, so we'll use the health in this case. What I want to do is any books that, again, with the lantern or edge that I know Denzel won't give me, I will take, but anything beyond that, I'm going to leave for an encounter with Denzel. So that would mean that Exorcist Field Manual is... Oh, hang on. That's fear, isn't it? No, that's contradiction. Exorcist Field Manual's fair game, as would be Glimmerings. Weirdly enough, I actually think that's it. Okay, not quite how I planned it. The other drawback here is I didn't really appreciate that the old wound would be something that I would lose... something that I would need the book that I was employing to recover. So, my bad. But we're not, like, we don't need to rush to get the old wound either. It's just we're going to be sort of sitting for a little bit, waiting for the results. Now, I do want to spend some money to restore the hang on. All right. In a minute, we'll want to restore the Faust. Also thinking at some point I do need to work on these other rooms, but the thing is we have 3 books that I could be reading right now. Okay, some of them are a little harder to read than the others, so maybe I shouldn't just go crashing into that right away, but still. Uh-huh. Still a chance. Okay, extra effort. Soul, Awen, or Ubisunt. You know what? I'm gonna take a chance on this one. An Exorcist Field Manual, a practical guide to troublesome dead, grounded in theory, but with a clear focus on their disposal, by the redoubtable Detective Austieri Wheellock of the Suppression Bureau. The dead usually avoid light as the most immediate manifestation of eternity, which has no place for death. However, those dead uplifted by gold, that is to say touched by an actinic theoplasma, happily bought about in daylight, and are perhaps strongest at noon. If you are dead but uplifted by green, that's the ring-use blessing. The crown growth offers a similar but nastier benefit. This is how burgeoning risen come about, but there are different degrees of sentience and freedom depending on which growths are involved. The consciousness of one uplifted by green is always greatly altered, though they never really seem like the same person. They may have dregs of their original souls, but these are often replaced by something else. The upshot, invariably, is that they need to be set firmly on fire. Full belly makes a helpful friend. Alright, let's chat, Denzel. And Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary. An anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of oniric irresponsibility and confined to the cucurbit. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone, but the dreams keep coming and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of oniric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brandkrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their finger bone. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Now, it's not critical that I have the Faust back, and in fact, it seems a bit premature. Am I going crazy? 15 seconds. Okay, that's fine. We'll restore this one. But I'm going to say it's on the nice-to-have list. Also, so I said I was going to take my chances here, but we have another book which wants memories and weather. Oh boy. Okay, fortunately the contradiction will save me here. I guess hail is the edge weather. Time, peace, recovery. I know some people like to keep a sort of a maladied element to the soul around for sort of unlimited actions. I can't really say that we've been constrained by elements of the soul in any meaningful way for a while in this playthrough now. Obviously, it depends on the circumstances. And the other thing is, it's a little bit like Cultist Simulator, where I don't want to begrudge people their ways of playing, but it does always feel a little weird to me that people would willingly hurt themselves in the contents of the game. Or in the context of the game, so I usually resist the urge to do that myself. Although again, not to sit in judgment in other people's on other people's playstyles, of course. All right, divine inspiration, or just the right breath of air at the right moment. So Ubisunt's got to be another one. I actually read, was it the Widow's... It's the Widow's Lament or the Wife's Lament? I think it's the Wife's Lament, because it doesn't necessarily... I think the status of the husband is unknown, and... Whoa! Sorry. Something very odd just happened on my... Alright, so to Lantern, Winter, Sky, Rose, just a little bit of everything. Where's the sky coming? Oh yeah, no, never mind. Scale's interesting, though. All right, so we're at time, but I do want to sort of finish off these books before calling it a day. How the End Will Begin, a prophecy of the Wars of the Roads recorded in the subcontinent in the days before the Great Hooded Princes. In the foretold war, the children of the Leashed Flame march on the cities of the continent, but enactors of solar law and the Triple Sisterhood join forces to hold them back at tremendous cost. In that battle between the imperishable legions and the Leashed Flame, the legions will perish and the flame will be unleashed. Okay, so for all our trouble, we get 2 Ragged Crossroads and Fear. I'm hoping we have the shelf space. We do not. This one I do rather enjoy. Opus Magnum Ceruleum. Ambrose Westcott used to render the title of this venerable and anonymous work mockingly as The Big Blue Business. A kinder translation would be The Great Work in Azure. The reasons for Westcott's enmity to this work are clear to any pyroglyphicist. It was written at least 2 centuries before he was born, but anticipates or undermines many of his preferred conclusions. The work in question is the creation of the blue gold allegedly necessary for the terrible rite which allows a forge long to become a name. The book mentions that pyroglyphics techniques can be used with forge to create iotic essence as a necessary component, but withholds the final step, insisting that the consequences are too dire, and that any interest should remain only a matter of theory. So, as expected, that did give us a foresight. What I don't recall is if we had room for more foresight, and we do. So now would not be a bad time to sort of take stock in terms of what my goals are relative to what I can accomplish. So the idea here was that I was going to level up Disciplines of the Scar. Currently I need 4 memories in order to do that. I'm slightly tempted actually to employ the Wormwood Dream to that end. Just because, well, I could also use the Curious Hunch. I don't hate that idea, the more I think of it. Just because it's a little easier for me to get the Curious Hunch. In fact, let's make that official. I think Preliminal Meter keeps me from... Nope. Okay. But yeah, so the goal here was to take Disciplines of the Scar and level that as far as I could. Now, with Ragged Crossroads and Pyroglyphics, we get close, but we don't get the full distance. So perhaps as the sun his course, or I think I had another sort of edgy text which didn't have a whole lot. I'll maybe start with this as the sun his course because I have other things that I can employ towards it. But that's kind of an example of how, or actually, yeah, so maybe I'll use the Ragged Crossroads first and then we'll, anyways, something for me to handle later. But anyways, it'll take us up to level 8. And that's a bit of an example in terms of how I would like to use this surplus collection here. When I have low-level things that I want to level up, these are going to be the books that I draw down in order to make that happen. But all of that will be handled in a future episode. So thank you very much for watching. Just a reminder, I'm going to try and record some more episodes, but on the odd chance that something gets in the way, Well, now, let's assume that there's going to be 2 more episodes this week. If you don't see them, though, something happened, and I will explain in the subsequent video. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.